If you are a filmmaker, you have a completely different attitude to what film criticism is. And film criticism is not a way to tap dance on somebody else's creativity. That's the one thing, and it shouldn't be. Film critics have to understand that you can't make your career tearing apart somebody else's career.
Even the word arena is actually
well,
symptomatic of the problem of registering that up. But that it shouldn't be full of snark and negativity and cruel ad hominem.
Yeah, we all like to read articles that make us laugh or make us think, oh, that's a nice phrase, but not if it's at somebody else's expense. I've met so many filmmakers who've been hurt by reviews, and it damages our relationship with the people that make what we love. What do I think film criticism should be? I can tell you what I think it should be. I think film criticism, okay, I distinguish between criticism and reviewing. Mm-hmm. I consider myself a reviewer. A reviewer is a person that finds a market for a film. Not every film as a big as market as the other one. Every film has at least one person that loves it. My job is to match my review to the person who might like the film. With criticism is where a person who has studied, who knows a lot about how films are made and their structure, what they're saying and what they're trying to say, will critique the high points and low points of a particular film. And this is a purely intellectual exercise. This doesn't have anything to do with the marketplace. Being a critic and being a reviewer often cross over. You can't be just one or just the other because they're always influencing each other. But I think the number one, reviews are shorter. Criticism is longer, generally. Reviewing is usually easier to read. Criticism is usually harder to read. There's bigger words, there's longer sentences. Number three, reviewing is more commercial by its very nature, whereas criticism is more academic. I find reviewing very difficult to do, and I don't think I'm naturally gifted at it. If I write a good sentence in a review, then that's an accident. When I sit down to write a review, I think about 3 points that I really want the reader to know. Things that I think will make them understand whether this film is something that they're going to want to see or not. The star rating I have problems with. I use it myself. I check IMDb ratings all the time, and I check the tomato meter. I do that. I'm there. I'm in both places. I find when it gets to be about 3 stars, there's a lot of really good films in 3 stars. And I think the star rating becomes incredibly brutal and crude. I don't think it really helps people at all. It only helps 2 stars or 3 or 4 or 5 stars. You get into 3-star rating, it gets down to horses for courses. So the star rating is essential for people because we're time starved. We need to know right away. But when it comes to finesse, it doesn't really help. When you're using star ratings, you're automatically restricted with word count. So it's either 200, 250, 300. And I've written so many of those that 500 is getting really hard to write now. That's true. I never read a lot of film criticism when I started. Mm-hmm. Although I did bump into Roger Ebert quite a bit. And he's from my neck of the woods, the same part of America. I thought he was really arrogant. So fine, good. He's acquitted himself. People love him, which is great. And he's actually a very good example of moving from print journalism into the new medium. I mean, the new media, because he's handled that very well. Things have changed hugely. There used to be just a handful of reviewers globally that would be must-reads in print, generally in the newspapers, sometimes in magazines, and sometimes on television or radio. And those are the people that you really hung on their every word, and it mattered a lot to Hollywood what they said, and their blurbs would be on the posters, and you had to find a reviewer then when there were so very few. You had to find a reviewer that would fit your tastes. And I have to do that. I find that A.O. Scott fits my tastes. I've got great taste. And now it's very, very different. Even my partner, who is a very experienced producer, has been producing films for a long, long time, is now listening to bloggers and he's putting up on his Facebook bloggers' opinions and not mine. So I'm outraged. But I think the terrain has changed hugely. We no longer have this handful of critics. We have a bucket full of critics. We've got a skip full of critics. Many, many, many that you can take a choice from. People don't understand that you cannot be professional if you don't get paid. It's important to get paid because otherwise you're doing something else instead of working on your craft. I think that film criticism and film reviewing are crafts. They are. If you're not getting paid, don't call yourself a film critic or a film reviewer. Call yourself what you are, unpaid help.
Okay. Well, that's very
No, it's really because if you don't get paid, you can't hone your craft. I'm not saying we're artists, but in a way, you're writing about art, so you've got to try and be as good as you possibly can.
But how, for say the younger aspiring film critic
Yeah.
who wishes to break into the business, how do they transition
tough.
from
Yeah.
being unpaid to being paid if they don't work unpaid?
That's
Because-
right. Well, you get yourself published so you have something to show, and it'll be in some shitty site where nobody pays you, and you feel resentful, and there's going to be typos, there's going to be repeats, you're going to use some crappy photos, the layout's going to be awful. You're going to use sentence structures like me and the director, which I love, thanks. Okay, I'm being really picky now, but it won't be a professional presentation. It'll be too long. It will need editing, and it won't get it. So you've got to try and write as best you can if you're working for free, and I have worked for free. Then you get to a certain limit, like I did with one particular organization here in London, and I said, I'm going to give you 50 reviews, and then that's quits. Then you go and get a job and you do something else. Don't keep your hand in. You can't. You can't afford to. If you're serious about this, do something else.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, it should be, if you're serious about this, don't do something else. There. If you're serious about film criticism, you have to be serious about getting paid for it. So you've got to find a way to be paid for it. Whether that is being a voice for a VOD company, whether that's reviewing. You see, you don't have to review for newspapers or online or magazines or any of these things. You can find a company who has, let's say, a library of films and say, I want to write for you. And you cut them a deal and you make sure you get paid. I'm not saying that you're going to get paid a lot or that you're going to be able to survive or you're going to be able to get married and have kids and buy a house. Hello. But you will get paid if you want to. It's important to be honored and respected like that. With money. If you want to show me your respect for me, pay me. I think the more voices, and here I am saying don't write for free, but the more voices we have, I think the better off we are going to be. We as consumers are going to be. Filmmakers, I'm not so sure, because I think filmmakers have problems that reviewers, unless they've worked in the industry, don't understand. They get criticized for things they don't even do. For example, you can criticize a director for something, and he will not have made that decision, or she will have not chosen that edit, or she wanted a different music played over the top, or they couldn't afford it, they wouldn't get it. So what we're criticizing, we really don't know a lot about. We don't know about the making of it. We only know our impression. When we're talking about the death of print, I think print is obviously shrinking, but I don't think it's lost its importance. I think it's going to a different demographic, and in a way, it is analogous to how we consume films now. We can watch them on tablets. We don't necessarily have to go to the cinema. Reading a review in a magazine, physically in a magazine, or on a piece of paper, in a newspaper, is sort of like going to the cinema. Now, that's the way we always did it. Now there are other ways to do it.
The problem, of course, being that a lot of people think cinema's days are numbered as well. I mean, I don't personally, but it's
well, I think the nature. It's never going to be what it was unless we go into the dystopia. Then maybe, who knows? Everything changes. I mean, that's the one thing that's certain. Yeah. The only certainty is uncertainty. So I would say that no, cinema exhibitors are having to learn a new way to survive, just as magazines and newspapers are having to learn a new way to survive. So I think there is a future for the professional critic. I think it won't be as pure or as powerful as it used to be. I think the days of Pauline Kael are pretty much over. But I do think that there are ways of being paid to write succinctly or speak succinctly and in an informed way about film, in a way that not only satisfies our intellectual curiosities, but also benefits the filmmakers that we love. Right now, at this moment in time, there is a difference between paid criticism and unpaid criticism. You can usually tell which is which, and that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Why is it a bad thing?
Okay, it's a bad thing because sometimes paid critics have an agenda and you can see the agenda. Advertisers, for example, there have been times when, for example, when I first started writing for Empire, they changed my bad reviews to good reviews. And I'm pretty sure that was for the advertising. I don't know, they fired me soon afterwards.
Okay, what's the good thing about that presumably is that there should be a distinction between paid and unpaid.
The good thing in that is that you can choose. You can get a professional, polished review that makes you feel, well informed and kind of with a full tummy. Or you can get somebody like you're at a pub with someone and he's talking away and he's putting all of his stuff in there and like what he ate, like ain't it cool, does, which I think they should stop. You can either get a more formalized opinion or an informal opinion, and I think that's good. Well, considering I can't even get a review in Sight and Sound, I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about this. No matter how many cocks I suck, I just can't seem to get a review in there. Do I think people are excluded? Yes, I think they have been. How else would Elvis Mitchell get all this work? This is a terrible thing to say! Okay. I think it's opening up now. And personally, I like to read Latino Review. Personally, I think it's really interesting to read Shadow and Act. It's important for me to see how these films are being viewed by people who aren't me. So I think that's really important. Whether there's a glass ceiling, yeah, there probably is, but there is in almost every industry. There was a very interesting discussion on the Critics Circle Facebook page about how many women write for Empire. And it was very hot and very testy because not a lot do. Some do. I really think it's important for critics to not try, particularly young critics, to not try and make their career by tearing apart another filmmaker, another creative person. I think that's really important. It's so easy to shoot from the hip and take the snot out of something. It's so easy to shoot from the hip and rip the snot out of something that's taken, a lot of people a long time to make. And you're just sitting in your bedroom in your underpants writing away some vitriol. I don't think it's funny, and I don't think it's grown up, and I don't think it's productive. So I wish people would stop. Anybody that writes about film should have worked on at least one film. And I'm not talking television, I'm talking film, because they're different right now. So you can see how people really fight to get these things done. Really fight. I don't think that film critics should buddy up with filmmakers. I don't think they should be in their little pocket saying, yes, everything's great. We don't want Ain't It Cool news. We knew Harry Nose sold out when everything started getting rosy. It isn't. It's a tough fucking business. And reviewing films is equally hard.